Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And tonight, stay tuned at 6 for Winning with WINANS with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans at WINANSinvestments.com. Right now, it's Mottek On Money. We are live on the air at 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and you're on demand, Mottek On Money podcast. KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Lower start to the new week on Wall Street. Stocks slipping today as the president reportedly granted another 90-day extension for deeper China tariffs. This as the number on inflation will be coming out tomorrow. That'll be closely watched. The Dow came in for a closing loss of 200 points today. The S&P 500 down 16. The NASDAQ, which started the day at a record high, pulling back 65 points. The yield on the 10-year note, which impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates out there, 4.29%. We did see stocks slip into negative territory today on reports the president pushed back his China tariff deadline now until November 9th, as the U.S. and China still work to negotiate a final deal. The president confirming today that he would allow NVIDIA to sell its H20 chip to China for a revenue cut in exchange. The chip that is something that China already has, the president said, noting the agreement does not extend to NVIDIA's next-generation Blackwell chip. The Financial Times was the first to report over the weekend that both NVIDIA and AMD agreed to give the U.S. government 15% of the money they make from selling certain computer chips to China. NVIDIA and AMD shares both closed slightly lower. We'll be taking a closer look at that coming up here shortly. The president has claimed the tariffs are having a huge positive impact on the stock market. Wall Street still navigating the twists and turns of sweeping duties on dozens of trade partners that went into effect last week. And we'll be getting the Consumer Price Index report first thing tomorrow morning, followed by the Producer Price Index, which measures inflation at the wholesale level. That'll be coming out on Thursday. Retail sales report will be coming out on Friday. The president today clarified that gold will not be tariffed. Precious metals futures whipsawed last week amid confusion about whether Swiss bars would be subject to additional tariffs. We did see gold pull back a bit today, right now just below $3,400 an ounce. In the meantime, it was a big weekend for Bitcoin, surging to near record highs. The price of Bitcoin got up to around $122,000, just below its all-time high, above $123,000. We'll be taking a closer look at cryptos this hour with ELEANOR TERRETT, crypto expert, business journalist, and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. On the China news, we'll be talking this hour with the one and only Gordon Chang, China expert and author of numerous books, and on X at Gordon G. Chang. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, crypto too, and the whole works now. Joining us now, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, president and chief investment officer at Winans Investments at WINANSinvestments.com. And you can also tune in to the Las Vegas edition of Winning with Winans these days. Ken Winans is also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Investment Atlas 3 is out, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends. Also, Forbes magazine contributor, has his crypto credentials too. Most importantly, he's host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday evening at 6, right here on your favorite station, 790 KBC. Ken Winans, good afternoon to you, and happy birthday, too, by the way.
Well, thank you, Frank. And it's funny you bring up my birthday because the big talk at my party was gold and crypto.
There you go.
And I find it funny that, it was, and I had a lot of, several of my very large clients were there. They were asking me more. But what's happening is people are, in fact, buying gold, physical gold, and they are stockpiling it. I've said before on the show that you want to be careful about doing that, only that you don't pay too much for a markup, and you've got to factor in storage costs, insurance costs, making sure that a relative you don't like knows where your gold's at, all these kind of things. But Frank, I have to say, and look, I'm not going to pick on barons, but I do find it funny that you just, as you pointed out, here Bitcoin near a record high, all these headwinds we keep talking about geopolitically, and what's the headline in Barron's over the weekend? New risk in crypto. Is the Trump administration setting crypto up for a fall? I mean, the old wall of worry, I think if there was one thing we could call 2025 is that it has defied gravity. It is downright helium in the way that things move. And I would just tell everybody that I think as they meet with their financial advisors, and especially there is a huge dispersion right now between people who have figured out how to navigate these markets and investment professionals who have not. And I think that a lot of people in our audience are going to have to just really question if they see lagging performance in their portfolios with whomever they're turning to for advice on why. Because there are just so many positives out there, green shoots within the cement that you can step into that are not high risk.
Or you got the magnificent one NVIDIA coming off an all-time high today, down only slightly to 182 and change on this big news on this China deal, which we'll be talking more about later this hour as well. But what's your reaction to this chip deal that will see the U.S. getting, 15% of the proceeds from chips sold by NVIDIA and AMD, and all kinds of interesting things happening nowadays?
Yeah, there is. I'm a little concerned only that, look, I at the end of the day, you have to trust who's running the show. But I am concerned that this sets a precedent that, excuse the pun, that when you have in the future a successful American business that is knocking the ball out of the park, that the government comes to them and says, besides the taxes we're going to hit you with on your profitability, we want to cut of the action. And I get a little concerned about that because, I can see down the road a left-leaning administration really jumping on this bandwagon. Unfortunately, this kind of theme seems to play very strongly in California politics. According to California, every company there owes its success to the great state of California, not by the innovations of the individuals running the company. But that is a mindset you have to be careful about. But it clearly has had a huge effect on what we're doing here. Our president is a deal maker. He clearly cut a deal that made sense. But Frank, I want to jump real quick. I think the other thing the audience needs to know, and of course you cover everything so wonderful. Obviously we have inflation reports tomorrow. We have retail sales on Friday. But the other thing too is that Wednesday really marks the end of earnings season. And, when you think about where you and I were, when we were both talking about earnings for the mid-year and that it was going to be good, bad, and ugly, and there were a lot of misses. Let's face it, there were. But when you still have 90% of the companies posting, 80% of them pass their earnings forecast, 82% surpass their revenue projections. Anybody out there thinking that we're heading for a recession, I have to tell you, between that and in market statistics, it is not bearing that. And this is in August, when typically August and September are really weak months. August has a ways to go. We know that. But, it's just right at this point in time, it's not baked into the cake. It's just not at all.
All right. What about this news about gold not being tariffed? We did see gold pull back a bit today, back below 3,400 after an impressive run, certainly this year and in the last week or so, popping back above 3,400, now kissing 3,400 right now at around 3,395. What about this big news on gold today?
What's been missed on the whole gold, and I'm going to throw silver and platinum into that as well. The central banks around the world are stockpiling these metals, and it's almost just as tariffs were a throwback to a different economic structure for the United States, so it is having central banks and, government authority stockpiling gold. And I don't know if it's as much a concern about the dollar as it is a concern about the euro and some of the other and the yen, some of the other currencies that are questioned right now. But whatever it is, I think that when, you and I have an interview in a couple of years, or an interview, we're going to be talking about in the reserves of central banks, it's going to be dollars, gold, and crypto. I think are going to be the big three that we're going to find. And we're going to find the yen and the euro are really not as talked about nearly as much. So I think it's just this massive it's just reversing everything and going back to some form of stability that everybody seems to be comfortable with. And also not to forget, I know that we've got a lot of issues right now with India. India is a massive buyer of gold in the world. It has to do with weddings and ceremonies. It's very much part of their culture. This is a time of year when they buy a lot of gold. So friend is your friend. Gold is continuing to go up. At this point in time, I don't see it pulling back. But if you do have any kind of a small pullback, I would take it as a buying opportunity and not panicking and selling everything.
All right, here's one we haven't talked about in a while, but it's getting attention today because their CEO was at the White House. Intel stock moving a bit higher today, up 70 cents to $20.65. I don't know if you saw the news there, but Intel's top person and visited the White House today for a high-stakes meeting with the president. And looks like Intel stock moved up slightly higher on that news. This is just days after President Trump called for him to quit over his ties to Chinese businesses. The president posted on Truth Social that today's meeting was a very interesting one, and that he called the CEO's story an amazing success story. What's your reaction to that? And what about Intel here at $20 and change?
You know, as I have to say, Frank, as a financial historian, you used to call the patriotism of the titans of industry into question whenever things didn't go well. And you can find newspapers written 100 years ago where you would have things brought up about, hey, wait a minute, whose side are you on? You're supposed to be an American. And very typically, a lot of them would say, hey, I fought in World War I or World War II, get off my back. But the point is, these are the kind of things that we are dealing with right now. What I would say about, I'm going to have to say old tech. As you know, I do track old tech. We have several, actually we have Cisco Systems and Applied Materials reporting on Wednesday, along with John Deere. I think those are going to be very important earnings reports for different reasons. But I do think, although we talk about the Magnificent Seven a lot, you need to watch old tech. Old tech is who is in that the clock, your bedstand clock, the electronics that go into just very simple things in your kitchen. These are not razzle-dazzle, but they're things that you use every day, and you need to pay attention to what's going on with those things. And a lot of those low-tech, old-tech companies, they make stuff for the military, and that's very important right now. So I would just say that although old tech has really lagged this year compared to the Magnificent Seven, again, you can't turn your back on Intel. They're just too important in a lot of these other areas that are part of our economy.
Old tech, new tech, high tech, low tech, Mottek on Money, live here, 790 KABC, on the air live with Ken Winans. And Ken, let's go right down the list of the Mag 7 names here. Tesla, which some say still is in the Mag 7, others say it's out because of Broadcom. But what about the other Mag 7 names that you've been watching?
Well, I do find it very interesting that everybody's talking about the valuation issues with these stocks. It was funny at the party we were talking about back in the dot-com days, how the stocks of that era were going to put all the retailers out of business. There would be no more retailers at all. Well, undoubtedly, Amazon proven that, there is a place for online retailing. But quite frankly, look at what's happened. Brick and mortar is still alive and well. The value, but the same theme came up, Frank, about valuation. And I would just tell the audience, look, be very careful about taking the valuation of an index or a valuation of a company as the sole gauge of whether or not you should buy or sell the stock. The reason is this: I've seen overpriced stocks continue to climb for years. Now, at some point, there is going to be a bear market. At this point, I don't think it's coming anytime soon. But these valuation bubbles can go on for a very long time. So as I go down the Mag 7 list, with NVIDIA and Apple and Meta and, certainly, Google and Alphabet, as we now call it, I'm just saying that you can see these things stretch. And I just think, again, when you have the supply of publicly traded stocks, there was a big report coming out this week, companies continue to buy back their shares. They're getting more valuable. Supply and demand, there's just not as many publicly traded stocks that are worth owning. So again, that alone can drive valuations higher.
On the air live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. At this point, Ken Winans, let me ask you the big question here, and that is any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, I'll tell you what I would tell everybody, I think you want to be careful on trying to catch any falling knives. In other words, stocks that missed their earnings, that have pulled back. Like one that I owned for a while and I sold it, thank goodness, earlier this year, Fiserv, which is a financial stock. It's just getting creamed. It's down 36%. I know some people are talking about, it's a great undervalued thing. I just don't think this is kind of your market. What I would say is this. I think you want to go and look at what has basically been able to have a strong year to date, a strong quarter, and a strong month. And as I go down the list, I think you want to look at certainly some of the financials. You've written through this pretty well. J.P. Morgan, they've come through everything. Goldman Sachs has come through everything. They're very strong. They're too big to fail, as we know from what happened in 2008, 2009. But Frank, the areas that you want to be in, when I go back and look at old stocks, look at the industrials particularly. I am amazed, especially some of the defense stocks. There is no red here when you look at GE, when you look at something like Kratos, KTOS, Curtiss-Wright. These stocks are up big on the year. They came through the summer in one piece. And as we know, Europe is going to be giving these guys some very large checks for aerospace business, or for defense business. I continuously find that people are just way underweighted in defense, and they're also underweighted in utilities. They're overweighted in tech, and they're overweighted in some other, especially foreign stocks. I think you need to rebalance your portfolio right now. And again, with August and September being a weak time, I'd buy the dips. This is not a time to sell the rallies.
All right, if you can put your crypto hat on for just a second, we're going to be focusing more on cryptos later this hour. We see Bitcoin kissing up to its record high over the weekend, then pulling back a bit, and now Ethereum is getting a lot of attention, hitting certainly the highest we've seen certainly in 2025, above 4,200. What about this Ethereum run-up we've seen?
Ethereum is fascinating because, as you said, it's the mother of all dead cat bounces. I've looked at a lot of things having rebounds in their lives, but the bounce in Ethereum has been absolutely astounding. I would say this: a lot of people that I talked to at my party over the weekend that were not crypto people at all. I know you can argue it's getting a little nervous that these people are late to the party, but they've elected to go into the ETF world. And I'm going to throw out there, if you want what I see as a fairly easy to read play from a standpoint of volatility, go look at the BlackRock, ETF, which is IBIT. This thing has been on a tear all year. It's up 28%. It's up 11 for the quarter. It's up on the month. It's hard to find anything wrong with that. The only other, if you were to buy that and gold GLD ETF or silver SLV. But Frank, you mentioned Ethereum. Ethereum is not for the mainstream investors. You've got to be a hardened trader to handle that guy. It's like a bucking bronco at a rodeo. You need to be an experienced rider to ride that thing.
All right, Ken, wish we had more time, and thankfully we will in the 6 o'clock hour here this evening on Winning with WINANS. Top-ranked money manager Ken Winans at WinAnsInvestments.com. Look forward to speaking with you at 6 on Winning with WINANS. Ken, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Take care.
Thank you very much. Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Lower start to the new week on Wall Street with the NASDAQ pulling back from a record high. The NASDAQ down 65 today at 21,385. The S&P 500 down 16 points at 63.73 at the start of the day, near its all-time high. The Dow down 200 at 43,975. Looks like Intel taking the spotlight here in after-hours trading, moving higher. Intel's chief executive visiting the White House today for a meeting with President Trump. Just a couple days after the president called for him to quit over his ties to Chinese companies. The president posted on Truth Social today that the meeting was a very interesting one and that Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan's success and rise is an amazing story, in his words. Intel shares moving higher in after-hours trading. We did see shares of NVIDIA pull back only slightly today from an all-time high, down 64 cents at 182 and change, and AMD down 48 cents at 172 and change. This after the president focused on those two companies as well. We'll talk more about that coming up with Gordon Chang later this hour, Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. The White House reported deals with the chip makers, NVIDIA and AMD, for a cut of their chip sales to China. Unusual, the two deals, according to various reports, would divert 15% of the company's respective sales revenues earned on China-destined chips to the U.S. government. In exchange for the profit sharing, the U.S. would then grant export licenses allowing NVIDIA to resume sales of its H20 chips to China and AMD to resume sales of its M1308 chips to China. Tomorrow we'll be getting the Consumer Price Index, which is expected to show prices rising at a faster clip compared to what we saw in June. That report will be coming out an hour ahead of the opening bell on Wall Street. The price of gold pulling back today, down about $10 here at the moment at $3,395 an ounce. Silver at $37 and change. Oil hovering just above $64 a barrel. A lot of interesting moves in cryptos over the weekend, and we're starting the week off the highs we saw over the weekend, where Bitcoin made a run for its all-time high, got up to around 122,000. Right now it's around 118. Ethereum has made a big run at above 4,200 here at the moment, and Doge right now at 22 cents. We'll talk about cryptos coming up with ELEANOR TERRETT, crypto expert and host of the Crypto in America podcast. She'll be joining me live coming up here in the next half hour. But right now, the latest news for you here on 790 KBC.
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
Welcome to oh God, I can't even get it going. Welcome to Talkville, folks.
Where it's fun to talk about Smallville. I don't think you really know what you're doing on a television show until you do a podcast about it.
I've learned so much.
So what did we do again? I don't know. Let's rewatch it and do a podcast so we know what we did.
Talkville, the Smallville Rewatch podcast.
Let's get into it.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Welcome to NFL Flag.
Are you ready? Yeah! Are you ready? Yeah!
No matter who you are, lace up your cleats, smear on your eye black, step out on the field and chase something. Chase a goal.
Let's get it!
Chase the big time.
Get down, ladies!
Chase rings. Chase gold medals. Chase all of it. It's all up for grabs now. NFL Flag. Chase something. Visit NFLflag.com to find a league and start the chase today.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Turning to cryptos now, we saw Bitcoin surge near its record high over the weekend, and Ethereum has hit the highest we've seen so far in 2025. Joining us live now, ELEANOR TERRETT, crypto expert, business journalist, co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. ELEANOR, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Of course, Frank. Happy Monday. How are you?
Happy Monday is right, especially if you have Ethereum, it looks like here, holding above 4,200 here. Let's talk about Ethereum, which was left for dead earlier this year and has roared back to life.
That's right. Actually, Ethereum's been having a great year. ETH maxis, as they're called. You've got your Bitcoin maxis, you've got your ETH maxis, your XRP maxis. Ethereum it's sort of known as the cryptocurrency that underpins a lot of these decentralized apps, Frank. So while Bitcoin is a store of gold, typically that's what Bitcoin proponents think of it as, and people outside the crypto industry now, we've been talking a lot about Wall Street, jumping onto the idea that Bitcoin is now the digital version of gold. Ethereum is sort of what makes the underlying technology run. A lot of apps are built on the Ethereum blockchain. We're seeing today the price rising. It's up about 13% in 7 days, up over 4,225.42 at this hour, Frank. So a lot of ETH maxis excited at the moment, I would imagine.
All right, ETH. Got to add that to my vocabulary now. Ether, it's also known as Ether, right? So thanks for updating us on that. What's the outlook here on ETH, Ethereum, and what are your market monitors saying about where Ethereum goes from here?
Well, as always, the maxis are shooting for the moon. So we've got price predictions upwards of 45 to 5,000 this year alone. I think a lot of it depends on the regulatory outlook, what we're going to get when Congress returns. We've spoken at length about this, but the Clarity Act, right, the crypto market structure bill that is, even when Congress is out, it is such a hot topic right now. You've got crypto lobbyists, all the crypto trade associations, heads of industry collaborating over this August recess while lawmakers are away, putting together these proposals. The the Senate Banking Committee actually put out a market structure discussion draft before they left, encouraging industry to weigh in. Now, they got over 130 responses, Frank, just in the last couple of days. The deadline was August 5th, and you can count people on that list, industry to the big banks. Goldman Sachs put out they call it an RFI, so response to information. Goldman Sachs weighed in, JP Morgan, some of the biggest names who really want to see, their fingerprints on this Clarity Act that Congress is going to take up in September, the Senate specifically, right? So I think a lot of the price action, might, it's the summer doldrums, I would say. So, we are seeing some price movements right now, but I think in the long run, the market structure Clarity Act will be, kind of what underpins this whole thing. And we're looking forward to that. A markup hopefully in September. Hopefully we'll get it done by the end of the year. But as you know, we got the Genius Act done. Clarity is a little bit bigger of a push just because it is more complex. It's sort of the plumbing, as I like to say, of what goes into, regulating the crypto industry. Who's got the jurisdiction? Is it the SEC or the CFTC? And kind of the rules of the road, right? That the crypto industry, and now I think it's up at $4 trillion now, Frank, which is actually incredible. Yes, over $4 trillion, the global market cap of the crypto industry. So, we've seen some serious moves this summer, but also obviously since President Trump took office in January.
All right, we're on the air live with ELEANOR TERRETT, so we're all waiting for clarity on the crypto front with that bill still hanging out there. And there's one other, right, that still needs to be voted on.
Yes, the Anti-CBDC State Surveillance Act, that mouthful of a bill, which basically prevents the federal government from launching its own stablecoin called a central bank digital currency, aka a CBDC. So we're looking for that to potentially be attached to the defense spending bill. So unclear exactly when the time frame for that might be, potentially by the end of the year. But the big focus in DC, at least for the crypto crowd, is now this Clarity Act and so the Clarity Act passed the House, right, in the form that the House pushed it through the Senate. Now pushed it through the House, and now the Senate is going to take it up. And whether they push it through looking like it did in the House, it's looking unlikely just because they put out their own discussion draft. They want to have their own stamp on it, so to speak. There's a lot of very seasoned senators on the Senate Banking Committee who have dealt with crypto for a very long time. Frank's Senator Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, Senator Tim Scott, the chairman of the Banking Committee, Bernie Moreno as well. He's a new senator this year from Ohio. He replaced Senator Sherrod Brown. He's a former crypto guy himself. So you've got these very experienced. And Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee. He also co-authored the Genius Act, the stablecoin bill. So you've got a lot of these senators who have a lot of pride, a lot of experience in legislating with crypto over the last few years. Not that it's gone very far, just because of the change in administration obviously was a big catalyst for that. Crypto was pretty much frowned upon in the last 4 years with the Biden administration, but you've got these senators who really want to have sort of a piece of the pie, so to speak. So look for clarity to be different than how it was in the House. There'll be some changes made, and could see passage by the end of the year. That's the White House. That's the White House's goal. Another piece of news that broke over the weekend, actually, is that the Crypto Council Executive Director, Bo Hines, is actually stepping down from the role. It was his last day on Friday. Crypto in America interviewed him today, and he tells us he's off to the private sector. He's also going to stay on as a so-called special government employee, which means he can be part of the private sector, but is allowed to advise the government in his personal capacity. So Elon Musk was a special government employee when he worked in the administration. David Sachs also has that title. So Bo will be doing that and looking probably to perhaps go to the crypto sector. He didn't give any clues as to where he might be going, but the rumors are swirling in DC and in crypto lobbying circles, Frank, as they do. And Bo's got a lot of experience in policy, in regulating. He's coming right from the White House, so he would be a prime candidate to be picked up by a crypto firm, looking to up their policy chops.
Certainly a big demand for people with that kind of expertise these days. We're on the air live with ELEANOR TERRETT, the co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Taking a look at some of the other major altcoins. We've been focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum for the most part here. What about Doge, Solana, and that list that keeps getting longer out there?
It does. Well, let me touch a little bit on XRP, Frank, because we had some news last week that boosted the price of XRP, and that was the Ripple SEC case coming to a close finally. And that was an interesting moment for me, rather a special moment, because I actually got into covering crypto, reporting on crypto, by first started reporting on the SEC Ripple case. Back in 2021 was when I started reporting on it. The agency under Jay Clayton at the time, who was Trump's former SEC chair, brought the case in December of 2020, and then Gary Gensler came in and took it over. But this case has been going through the courts. They call it the court of the trial of the century, right? Aside from the SBF case, you've got the Ripple case, which many consider to be one of the most high-profile crypto court cases of all time. It was going on for nearly 5 years. And when the change of administration came, when the shakeup at the SEC happened, when SEC Chair Gary Gensler was replaced with Paul Atkins, you saw a lot of those crypto enforcement cases that were brought over the last 4 years under Gensler be obliterated, right? They rolled back their investigations. They dropped litigation cases. It was pretty unprecedented what was going on. I mean, there were active court cases that the SEC basically said, never mind, we're actually going to drop all that because there's no rules of the road. And while we craft those rules of the road, while the crypto task force at the SEC does their thing, we're gonna put a pause on all this. And Ripple was caught up, but Ripple, unfortunately, it's an older case, right? It was brought in 2020, long before the Coinbase and Kraken cases. So it had already gone through the district court. So there was a district court ruling in place. And in 2023, the judge in that case ruled that Ripple had to pay a fine and had an injunction in place for, potential violation of securities laws. We don't know what those violations of securities laws actually look like because there were no rules of the road, right? So now basically what happened last week is that the two parties, the SEC and Ripple, jointly agreed to withdraw their appeal. Ripple decided to withdraw its cross appeal. So basically it's all done. And all that to say, the XRP price on that news jumped about 5%. I know it's been up and down a little bit over the last couple of days. It's up over $3 now, but since Trump took office and, there's been the rollback of enforcement actions, much softer stance on crypto, XRP has gone gangbusters, Frank. I mean, it's the number 3 cryptocurrency by market cap now. It's over 185 billion in market cap. So keep an eye on XRP, and that news was definitely fueling the price surge last week. And then you've got, let's see, Dogecoin. Dogecoin's down at number 9, just above 22 cents. You've got Solana up at 175 nearly. Solana's an interesting one because that is actually being adopted by the institutions on Wall Street, right? Solana, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like XRP, kind of being considered as this like alternative asset that they want to take a chance on. A lot of the Wall Street ETF providers have put in applications for Solana ETFs. We're still waiting to hear back what's going to be the outcome of that. So, a lot of exciting things going on in the space, and we're always watching the price action, of course.
Terrific. We'll watch Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP, especially now after this conversation. Eleanor, thank you very, very much for that comprehensive update. As always, we do appreciate it. That is Eleanor TERRETT, crypto expert, business journalist, co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Former U.S. Navy SEAL Sean Ryan captures real stories about sacrifice and strength.
Looking back, what would you tell your 10-year-old self?
Just hold on. The amount of times that this man is threatened to shoot me.
There's a saying, there's no atheists in a foxhole.
That's what I hear.
Uncovering truth with the heroes who live to tell it.
You had a guardian angel.
I did.
Why did you think that?
So many things happened that I just come out okay.
The Sean Ryan Show.
Go ahead, pull that trigger. You ready?
I'm ready, brother.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. President Trump today signing an executive order implementing another 90-day pause on additional tariffs on China that were set to take effect tomorrow. According to CNBC, the move again pushes off a deadline for imposing the harshest taxes on Chinese imports as the two sides continue negotiations on a deal. Joining us live now, China expert Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. On X, he can be found at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call. Give us your reaction to this latest news here.
Well, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, after he had met the Chinese negotiators in Stockholm, actually did signal that there would be another 90-day extension. So I guess this is not a surprise. Normally, an extension helps the Chinese because it means it gives them more time to steal our intellectual property and to engage in predatory trade practices. But this time, because President Trump is signing up these trade deals with other countries, or at least arriving at frameworks, what we're doing is we're isolating China. So as time progresses, I think that we're seeing a redirection of trade from China, and this is good news for the United States.
The other big story from the White House, reported deals with the chip makers NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices AMD for a cut of their chip sales to China. Raising some eyebrows here, could end up in court. These deals announced today, according to various reports, would divert 15% of the company's respective sales revenues earned on China-destined chips to the U.S. government. Your reaction to this interesting development?
The president's plan is horrible from almost every aspect. First of all, government should not be trying to take revenue from companies. He taxed them, but not revenue. This looks like a move that could create all sorts of abuses. But also there's something specific. Frank, here we have the U.S. government now has a direct financial interest in approving sales of sophisticated semiconductors to China. That's absolutely the wrong move. We shouldn't be selling these chips to China. But now we've got the federal government has a lot of reasons to do that. And so I think this is wrong on every aspect. It's philosophically wrong. It's also on the specifics. It's wrong as well.
Supposedly, the U.S. would grant export licenses allowing NVIDIA to resume sales of its H20 chips to China and AMD to resume sales of its M1308 chips to China. You probably know in detail what those chips are all about. Supposedly, the H20 is an old chip, right? So what's your reaction to this part of the story?
Well, the H20 is not NVIDIA's most powerful chip. As Commerce Secretary Mottek said, it's like their third best chip. But it does allow China to integrate AI into their military systems. So this is not a good move for the United States. China always touts its success in chips, but I think it exaggerates a lot. And the reason is we know that they want NVIDIA chips. And if they wanted NVIDIA chips, it means that they can't do it on their own. So we should not be helping China develop its military, which is configured, after all, to kill Americans.
On the air live with Gordon Chang, the Coast Guard, according to Fox News, is warning of increased Chinese research vessel activity in the U.S. Arctic. What about the latest military moves made by China? What's on your radar screen?
Well, China has a very big fleet of icebreakers, even though it's not an Arctic state. And when combined with its friend Russia, they certainly are able to bring more assets into the Arctic region. You know, we don't even have a Navy base in Alaska. We've got a Coast Guard base there. And because this is an area of increased contention, we need to have more military assets in the region. So I think the Navy, as a matter of urgency, should be reactivating its bases in Alaska.
What is the situation now with China's economy? With, at last check, supposedly activity between California and China, especially very low as far as cargo ships are concerned. And there's one report from the BBC, I don't know if you saw this one, China's unemployed young adults pretend to have jobs, with some individuals paying to go into offices and pretend to work. That's an interesting report. The BBC is reporting that.
Yes, and this is sort of reminiscent of the U.S. Great Depression, where guys would leave in the morning looking like they're going to work, but they had nothing to do. The problem is youth unemployment in China is very high. We don't know exactly how high. China has been messing with its statistics, but 2-3 years ago, it was probably somewhere about 46%, according to a Peking University professor who studied the area in quite detail. So we know that it's high. We don't know exactly where, but this is not surprising in the sense that people do not want to reveal that they are unemployed.
China expert Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of numerous books, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America on X, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz, and then stay tuned at 6 for Winning with Winans. I'll be back with Ken Winans right here, 790 KBC.
I am Michael Rosenbaum.
I am Tom Welling.
Welcome to Talkville,
where it's fun to talk about Smallville.
We're going to be talking to sometimes guest stars.
Are you liking the direction Lois is going in?
Yeah, because I'm getting more screen time.
It's good.
But mostly it's just me and Tom remembering.
I think we all feel like there was a scene missing here.
You got me, Tom.
Let's revisit it. Let's look at it. See what we remember.
See what we remember.
I had never been around anything like that before. I mean, it was so fun.
Talkville.
Talkville.
I just had a flashback.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Let's get into it.